I grew up believing that if you worked hard, stayed honest, and treated people well, the world would return the favor. That was my operating system for the first 26 years of my life. I was the guy who stayed late to help coworkers finish their projects. I covered shifts. I proofread reports that weren't mine. When my manager needed someone to take on the Henderson account €1, the nightmare client nobody wanted €1, I raised my hand. I genuinely thought that kind of behavior was an investment. That one day, someone would notice and the return would come. At the firm, there was a guy named Marcus. Marcus showed up at 9, left at 5, and spent a third of his day talking to the right people. He didn't cover shifts. He didn't help anyone with their reports. But he had lunch with the VP every other Thursday. He laughed at the right jokes. He made sure his wins were visible, and his failures landed quietly on someone else's desk €1. Sometimes mine. When the senior associate position opened up, I had been there 3 years longer. My numbers were better. My clients asked for me by name. My manager had told me twice that I was the backbone of the team. Marcus got the promotion. I remember sitting in my car in the parking garage for 40 minutes that evening. I wasn't even angry at first. I was just confused, the way you're confused when the math doesn't add up, and you keep checking your work thinking you must have made an error somewhere. But the math was fine. The system was just different from what I had been taught. I quit 6 months later. Not out of bitterness €1. I want to be precise about that €1. But because I finally understood the environment I was in and decided it wasn't the one I wanted to keep investing in. I started a small consulting practice. Just me, a laptop, and 3 clients I'd built relationships with over the years. One of them followed me out of loyalty, which I was grateful for but didn't expect. The other 2 I had to earn from scratch. Here's where it gets complicated, because the lesson I took from Marcus wasn't what most people would expect. I didn't become Marcus. I didn't start gaming systems or stepping on people. What I did was stop being invisible about my own work. I stopped assuming that good output spoke for itself. I learned to communicate what I was doing, why it mattered, and what it produced. I stopped treating self-advocacy like it was something shameful. I also stopped extending unlimited goodwill to people who gave nothing back. That one was harder. It felt like a betrayal of who I was. But there's a difference between being generous and being a resource that people extract from without reciprocating. I had been the second thing for years and called it virtue. The consulting practice grew. By the end of the second year, I had 11 clients and had to turn work away. I wasn't ruthless. I didn't cheat anyone. I kept every commitment I made, probably more carefully than before. But I was honest about my value, clear about my terms, and I stopped apologizing for expecting fairness in return. I ran into Marcus at an industry event 2 years after I left the firm. He had been passed over for a director role and was visibly bitter about it. He'd spent years building proximity to power without building anything real, and when the power shifted €1, new VP, new priorities €1. He had nothing underneath him. He asked me how the consulting was going. I told him it was going well. He said he'd always known I had it in me. I thanked him. I meant it. He had taught me something the firm never would have. The idealism didn't die. That's the part one wants to be clear about, because I think people hear, "Nice guys finish last," and conclude that the answer is to stop being nice. That's the wrong read. The answer is to stop confusing niceness with passivity. Stop confusing generosity with the inability to set limits. Stop treating your own interests like they're less legitimate than everyone else's. I still help people. I still try to do right by the people I work with. I show up. I follow through. I tell the truth even when it's inconvenient. The difference is I stopped waiting for the world to notice and reward me for it. I started making sure my work was seen, my value was understood, and my contributions were matched by something real in return. Finishing last had nothing to do with being nice. It had everything to do with believing that being nice was enough to exempt me from advocating for myself. It wasn't. Now I do both. It turns out that's not a contradiction at all.